All right, here we go. This is the official start of the first membership masterminds discussion, topic being renewals today. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you could, in the chat, if you could please put, I'm looking for the chat on my computer. What I'd love for you guys to do is if you could, do other people see the chat? Is it just me that can't see it? You guys can see it?
Yeah.
You see it at the bottom?
Oh, there we go. I got it. I'm sorry. This is my first time in Zoom. All right. So if you could put in chat, number one, if you're a trade or professional organization, or if there's some other word you want to use to describe it, that's fine. Maybe a hybrid. And your renewals, are they annual, fiscal year, calendar year, or are they rolling? I think that's pretty relevant for the discussion. While you're doing that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let's start with this. So there's a pretty little logo. There's the topic. Love that logo. That was fun to design this. By the way, to give you a little perspective, who I am, why I'm here, I am not an association executive. I am an association professional, meaning I am the co-founder and CEO of Prop Fuel. I am extremely invested in our space. And what I mean by that, I'm emotionally invested. I really love working with associations. I've been working with associations for 20 some odd years. It's a big part of my identity and who I am. And that's why I wanted to create this group. I know many of you are not members of ASAE, despite the fact that I think ASA is a great organization. We should all belong to it. I know many do not. And so I wanted to create a group in LinkedIn where a lot of us meet on a regular basis to spark a conversation that includes people that aren't in ASA. And so that's what this is about. I know there's plenty of groups out there, but I haven't been able to find many groups that are very specific to membership. And so this is an experiment. If we find it doesn't work, we'll shut it down in a few months. If we find it's not working in LinkedIn, we'll try another medium. But it appears to be working merely by the fact that we have so many people here today. A big part of this, of course, is the 250 members. Now, that is people that have joined the community in LinkedIn. Let's see here. Let me see if I can. Whoop, there's one of my association things. Oh my God, you'd think I'd never used my computer before. All right, here we go. I wanted to get into the LinkedIn. So we've got 250 members in the LinkedIn group. What I've noticed is there's not a lot of actual engagement here in the LinkedIn community. Now, that might be okay, but I want to encourage you, if you have questions, if there's things you want feedback on, if you just want to bounce ideas off of people, try it. Let's see if we can get some activity in here. If we can't, and people don't want to have these discussions, or maybe it's not top of mind, if we don't want to do that here, that's okay. We'll have these periodic group discussions in Zoom. All right, so I encourage you to invite your friends, invite your peers, invite people in the membership, your membership world into membership masterminds. Let's see if we can turn it into something that you guys find valuable for each other offline and live in Zoom. All right, so going back to the topic, I think I covered this. This is really a community just for you guys to communicate with each other. I get a kick out of the conversation and I learn a lot from you guys, and that's why we're here. All right, having said that, before we get into some of the questions that we put together as more or less seed questions, hey, Brittany, could you copy these and put these into chat? So that I'd much prefer get this off the screen so I can look at people.
Yes.
Thank you. So these are some of those questions we'd like to discuss, but before I do, I know when we sent out the reminder for this, the question on the table was, come to the table with challenges or questions. Does anybody have a challenge or a question when it comes to renewals that you want to bring to the table before we drill down into some of these more generic topics here? Yeah, Dana.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys offer like early bird discounts for your renewal notices. Um, I don't think many associations do, but I was wondering if anyone does, and if you do, how do you do that through Prop Fuel?
Oh, so just to be clear, Dana, this isn't, I appreciate, I always love talking about prop fuel, talk about prop fuel all day long if you want, but this group of people are not prop fuel users. Some of you are, some of you are
Oh,
not.
okay.
That's okay. This is not a prop fuel event. This is, we just happen to be the ones that organize this. So take that question as a generic question across the board.
Mhm.
Do you, the question was, Dana, do you offer early bird incentives for a renewal process? And I would add to that, because this is one of the questions in the list here, is how early do you start pinging your members for renewals? Anyone?
I can answer because in my previous association, we implemented for a couple of years that if you paid by December 31st, you received that current year rate versus paying the new rate in the next year. And part of the reason that we did that was because people were paying like in April of the next year, right? And so we were trying to get people to pay on the cycle that we wanted them to pay on. So we did it for a few years. It seemed to help in that regard. We always started letting our first notices went out in October. So that was kind of what we did. And it did work for a few years, and then we changed it and didn't get very many complaints. So there you go.
Thank you.
We got a couple other comments in chat, and I know you guys can see this as well as I can. Christina, where's Christina? Christina, raise your hand so I can see which one's Christina. Oh, hi, Christina. So Christina said 90 days prior to renewal is when they start. Anna, I tell you what, I'm not going to pick on people. I'm not going to make you. Sorry about that, Christina. Anna says October for January 1, so I'm assuming that's early October, 90 days or so. AGC says 60 days prior. That's Chad, says 60 days prior. Anyone that doesn't do 60 or 90 days prior to start to ping members, anything other than 60 or 90 days? Michelle, what do you do?
We actually auto renew all of our members at about 45 days before membership would expire. And then we have a really long grace period, and it's purposeful that we do it leading up to our annual conference in October. So we kind of cut off membership just prior to our conference, but it's because we work with schools. So summer is a really dead time for us. So we do work with them through the fall. But then we'll cut off right before our annual conference in October.
So auto renew and you work with schools, does that mean, I'm assuming if you're working with schools, you're not processing a credit card, you're just sending them an invoice or something? Is that what you're doing?
We are, yeah, we do all electronic. So we auto renew mid-May before school closes. They have summer, the membership year begins July 1. So we'll get some in before the new membership year. We then do typical accounting, don't forget your dues is due July 1. We will then do a 15-day reminder, 30-day reminder, 45-day reminder. Pretty much the time that our accounting manager is ready to start dealing with audit for the year. We've done the majority of our collections by then. She hands over a small list to the rest of the staff. We get on the phone and we clean it up pretty easily by September or October. And the handful that we have outstanding, we have a pretty high retention rate, fluctuates between 96, 98%. Like I said, we cut them off before our annual conference in October.
Yeah, retention for trade versus professional is always dramatically different. And,
Yeah.
and that's an interesting tactic for trade to assume people are gonna, just send an invoice. Is there any
Yeah.
trade association here that does not send invoices, that they process credit cards, or I don't know, any other way of collecting?
We do give our members the option to have a credit card on file. We only have a handful that take advantage of that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly not the majority of our members.
Tanya?
Yeah, we process ours just credit card. We don't accept checks or anything. We do the same thing. We auto renew. But we're actually looking at seeing if we could do some ACH as well, processing, so it's
Yeah.
easier. So yeah, that's kind of our main method of payment.
Are there any professional associations here that that do auto renew?
Yeah, we do auto renew.
We do auto renew too.
And so you have their credit cards on file?
Correct.
What percentage of your members, Dana in particular, what percentage of your members are set up on auto renew?
We just started the process to flip. And so I can tell you that when we flipped in the last 3 weeks, we had 90% of the renewals changed to auto renew, but that's just the last 3 weeks of the renewal. So that was really exciting to see.
Wow. And do you offer an incentive for auto renew or no?
No.
Who is the other person that said they do auto renew? Oh, hey,
I do
Danielle
it too.
and Christina. Danielle and Christina, anyone else?
Yeah, we do it, IMA.
IMA, okay. Hey, Tom. Was that Tom that said that?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, what percentage of your members are on auto renew?
A third, roughly.
And you've been doing it a while?
Couple of years.
What about you, Danielle?
So we've been doing it a while and pretty small percentage, but we just converted to a new AMS, and now we're defaulting everybody to auto renew, and they actually have to turn it off. That was direction of our board. They said that's the way of the world right now. Netflix, everything else, it just auto renews you and you have to turn it off. So it's brand new. So I can't say what the, feedback is, but we're going to try it.
I sense a little anxiety in your voice.
Well, I'm actually kind of excited about it, but I do anticipate that, we will get that person who said, I didn't know, even though we're, the language and everything, we're trying to make it as clear as possible, but there's always, we all know there's always that member.
Danielle,
Christina, oh, I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Dave.
Go ahead.
I
Go
was just gonna
ahead.
say, Danielle, you'll have to post in the community a couple months in to let us know how that's going.
Yes,
So
I can.
I'm on the Prop Fuel team, but prior to Prop Fuel, I was in membership and marketing roles with like medical associations. And that was a conversation that we had at the last association I was with, was essentially what are the benefits to automatically enrolling people in auto renew and requiring them to opt out, because that's essentially how everything is working these days. Like you mentioned, like people, if you buy an app or you buy a subscription, you're automatically enrolled in that renewal unless you opt out. So
Yeah.
I'm curious
Well,
to hear how that goes.
I think that's why we talked about this many years ago and we were hesitant to do it. But now, again, people are accustomed to that, to having to opt out, or turn it off. So that's why we decided to go forward with it now.
Has anyone else considered having that type of auto renew setup?
Yeah, that's why ours is 90% for the
So yours
first.
automatically?
Yeah, it
enroll?
automatically, and there's only few
Okay.
that opt out. And just from membership too, we were asked to do that because sometimes renewal emails don't go through, people forget, and
Yeah.
they actually appreciate it. And it was also direction from the board.
Christine, I saw you shake your head. So you do not do an opt-out. People opt in to auto renew?
We hit them up and let them know. Previously, there were some issues with that. Our memberships by institution, and so the fees are quite high. So a lot of the credit cards would get possibly rejected or need approvals. We also have membership based in Latin America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Africa. So that affects the auto renewals. It's not very prominent even in America, though.
So Heather's curious about the credit card fees. For those of you that do auto renew, who covers those? Jason, it looks like you increased your dues to cover the fees.
We just increased them flat. We've seen, probably 30% more of our members renewing annually post-COVID via credit card. So we told everybody, hey, you can pay however you want to, but just know your dues are going up accordingly. So
Did you get any pushback on that from your members, Jason?
well, it had been probably 6 years since we had had a dues increase.
Oh, okay.
And we hadn't hit, so we were now in year 2 of a 15%. Basically a 5, 4, 4, and then I think 2, 2. So our members know what the strategy is, know what the plan is. And I think in total, we've had one member complain, and it was actually that member's boss, we're a trade group, who was the chair of the membership committee, who approved it. So we've technically take that as no complaints. So
Nice.
it's not, the main thing was we told them ahead of time. And explained to them in that renewal letter why, what for. Not only was it the credit card fees, but it was all of our costs across the board had gone up. And I feel like transparency helped us out accordingly.
How much did you increase? Forgive me if you already said it.
5% first year. Year 2 now we're in 4%, and it drops. I think it's 3, 2, 1. I'm trying to remember now exactly what that percentage is, but it's an average of roughly 3% a year. We just went very aggressive in the first year. We went to our membership committee and said, we need to increase them. Here's what we're looking to do. Do we eat the elephant at once, or do we eat it a little bit at a time for the next 5 years accordingly? And there is a built-in expulsion at the end of next year for the membership committee to review it and say, this is working, this isn't working. Members are leaving in droves, or nobody's talking about it, and we can remove and adjust or keep going accordingly. So right now we've had one person.
I'm again, I'm not an association executive, but I am on the board for a chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, and similarly, we have an auto increase each year. Can't remember, it's 3% or 5%, but we have an auto increase. We just started it this year, but we had the same conversation of, do we wait a few years and then do a big increase? And we opted in, regardless of the inflation rate, just to do an auto increase each year forever and ever. And in fact, Prop Fuel, you guys obviously know by now that we're probably the only vendor in the room here, but Prop Fuel, we have an auto increase in just about, unless there's an extenuating circumstance, in just about all of our contracts as well with our clients, which are very much like a membership sort of thing as a subscription. In fact, most software companies do that. Most organizations in general have an increase to match that of inflation. It's pretty normal, right? So it'd be odd if you don't.
We are the oddball in that, but I think it speaks to the fact we have a 92% retention rate, because our members look back at us the other way and say they're doing everything they can not to increase dues on us standardly. And we do our best, again, to communicate that of, hey, look, if we can save a little bit on our number 2 pencils to not push your dues costs up, we'll do everything we can accordingly. But again, we'll see where we are in a couple of years when it comes to that, but seem to be doing okay.
Tanya, you had something to say?
Just curious on the just increase on dues up to our 3% annually. Curious on what your starting point was on your dues. And secondly, any negative feedback? Because this membership year, ours ends on June 30th and starts July 1st. And I've got a good handful of people are saying, like, your dues are too expensive. And you can only do so much to say, well, we bring value, but there's a staff you're kind of helping pay, and there's inflation, but people don't like to hear that. They like to think things happen magically in the background. But yeah, so 2 questions. What were your starting dues, and any negative feedback, and how do you combat that?
Can I comment on the price thing? And then I'd like to, while everybody else is thinking, if you don't have some people saying the price is too high, then you're not charging enough, right? Like you've got to find that point where you're maximizing the price for the value, where the point where you're not losing a lot. It's a lot like sailing. You got to get right into that point where the wind is in the right spot, and that's what makes pricing so tricky, I think. But yeah, I think it's healthy to hear a little bit of noise about the price. Any comments about or other questions? Tanya, sorry, Tanya's other questions.
I think the articulating the member value is always the challenge, right? And justifying the price, whatever the price is. I think we get a lot of pushback. We have a different challenge that we're trying to get our arms around at the moment, and that is that a couple of years ago when we implemented auto renew, we offered a hefty discount for people to sign up for it. And so we're trying to not keep giving that 25% discount, but to actually bring our dues up to the real price. So, but yeah, a big part of it is making sure that we're articulating the value prop to our audience, beyond just a list of the benefits and the courses and things like that. And we're actually a new customer of PropFuel, and that's one of the things that we want to use the tool for. Sorry to give you a plug there, Dave.
No, I actually, I was dying to say something, and I was going to hold back because I didn't want to criticize your approach. However, now that you're a customer, I'm going to criticize your approach. I'd love it if you would consider not telling people your value proposition, but trying to understand their needs, and then
right,
and you can deliver what's important to each individual member, as opposed to just a blanket statement saying this is what we do and how we do it. Good luck finding your value. That was
right,
very poorly articulated, but I think that's the whole point. Is let's try to create a value proposition for each unique individual member. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here.
No, I think you're right, but I think that part of the pushback of the people saying it's too expensive, it's generally related to the value that they are deriving from that membership. And so it's on us to be able to articulate, okay, this is where you can get that value.
That's brilliant. Yes. Nothing's too expensive. What's happening is there's not enough value, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I some of you may have heard this if you ever been to a webinar that I've done, but I had a physical therapist and he asked what I did, and I told him software, and he asked more detail. And I said, well, do you belong to any associations? I used to, a national level physical therapy association. And he said, but I don't anymore. I was like, why not? And he's like, well, it's too expensive. I was like, really? Because it's not that much. And he's a professional in the industry. It turned out that he couldn't find the value because there's just too much stuff. He couldn't filter through to figure out what was important to him. And I think that's what you're talking about, Jackie.
And
exactly.
Tanya, I think one of your other questions was how to address the pushback from people if you start talking about the dues increase. And I think Jason touched on this a little bit, because that's, again, another thing that I was working on with a previous organization. It's also explaining the why behind the increase. So what does this dues increase bring to the member? What are the new platforms that you're using, or the things you're doing to really ease their life and make their life easier, or offer a better service, whatever it may be. Communicating that could help as well. You're always going to have people push back and tell you it's already, like Dave was saying, it's already too expensive. Why are you raising the dues? So you're really not going to be able to avoid that, but you can try to at least explain, give some reasoning behind it.
That's a good strategy. Thank you, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't get frustrated when they don't read your emails or letters or text messages or carrier pigeon drops or whatever the case may be. You're going to have to pay it 5, 6, 7 times in a multitude of different ways.
But the key being a multitude of different ways, right? There's what I've seen many, many times is people send the traditional broadcast email saying, here's all those great things, renew now. and then, you know, maybe they're sending snail mail, and then they kind of just accept that there's X number of people that aren't going to renew, and then they take a different approach. And this is the part I see, because they're using us to do that and working with us, but they take a different approach, and boom, they get a surge of registrants that they were ready to let go. So that's the key, is trying a different approach. Speaking of different approaches, does anybody use SMS for renewals? Renewal reminders or anything?
I wish we did. The tough part is getting our members to give their cell phones to us,
Opt
and
in.
I mean, I'm going to probably let's cover this up when I say this, but we have more fax numbers than we do cell phone numbers. But that is a representative of the fact that our membership is of a different age. We're 76-year-old trade association.
What association is that, Jason?
Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association. We are cranes, rigging, machinery moving, specialized construction.
That is awesome. I'm picturing a fax machine in a trailer.
Yeah, they're moving a little beyond that, but at the same time, it's specialized construction. And getting them to be okay with you storing their cell phone numbers and communicating to them that way in a deeper way is a bit of a roadblock, but at the same time, they want you to. So I think it's kind of a new frontier for us as we go forward of, hey, if you give this to us, we can do this, but you've got to do it well. That's kind of the other thing too. If they're going to trust you with it, you can't exploit it, and you can't fumble the ball on the 1 yard line the minute you get a turnover, you know, at the goal line. So
we've been in discussion and exploring that because our demographics, like our cohorts, shows that we're obviously in that shift of the younger, and we obviously need to fill a pipeline of membership, so we need to target that younger demographic who's like always on their mobile. So we did look into that, and something that we're still exploring, but right now, like the major hurdle we're facing is pricing, the setup, and all of the privacy laws, because we're based out of California, is what is our major struggle, because there's so many laws, and nonprofit in itself has all of these very strict laws associated with privacy that it is a sticky wicky that we don't want to ever get caught, because the fines are basically probably going to get us in trouble financially. But yeah, we'd love to utilize it because we think, you know, everyone's using their mobile for everything and anything. And it would probably be the best form of method in communicating with them, because I think emails are getting a little stricter as well. And obviously everyone's inundated. So yeah, those are the two hurdles we're facing: the cost and all those privacy laws that are launching. How do we do it?
Anyone else using SMS for?
We're
renewals
not
or
using
anything?
we're not using SMS. We considered it. I don't think it makes sense for our type of membership. We are doing two different call campaigns, 60 days prior to renewal and first month of grace. And based on the results of that, I'd like to pivot to like a dropped cowboy or drop voicemail. And that works with cells as well as landlines. And I think it's like 8 cents a call.
I'd be curious on the legality behind those as well. Like what regulations are, because I do know there's a lot of regulations around automated phone calls. Like
It depends if it's ringless or dropped. And a lot of ways that it works around it, it depends how you're using it. If it's for other marketing or it's just simply for the renewal, because then it's transactional and they're already a client business relationship.
So that's interesting. I know that applies to email. I'm not sure about mobile. Like, and I know that does not apply to SMS. You cannot send transactional, to the best of my knowledge, you can't send transactional SMS messages without people opting in. So yeah, it gets very confusing because there are email rules, but nobody enforces them, right? So
Right.
But Tanya and Jason, you pointed something out, especially you, Tanya. There's a lot of rules around SMS, and they are enforced. So the medium matters. What I've seen in working with a whole bunch of associations now is there's time. It's you described it so well, Tanya. There's a lot of interest. Like people are intrigued by this SMS thing, but it's a lot of work to build the network of membership, Jason, like you were saying, to build that network, that membership network of people that are opting in. That's a slow roll. Like that's literally years of building a new list essentially. And it takes patience. And I think a lot of us don't have patience because we have so many other things that are really important and are more effective.
So,
No question, just an opinion there. Sorry, Danielle, go ahead.
oh no, it's okay. So we have not used SMS for membership, but for the first time for an event coming up, we're using a company that does kind of like a chat bot feature all through SMS. So when they're registering, they do have to opt in, and they are opting in to, texting. So we plan on using that list specifically for the event, but after the event, you can do some follow-up and kind of building it from there. So this is like our first step into this, is to get their, like you said, their opt-in, but it's very specific for an event they're attending, which most people opt into that because they want to know what's going on for an event they're actually paying to attend. But the program does allow you to expand it afterwards for other things like membership. So this is our pilot with the event, and we'll see how it goes.
I mentioned I'm on the board for Boston EO Entrepreneurs Organization, and we use SMS for event notifications. Actually, that's it. I think renewals as well, just as a reminder, but event notifications and renewals. If you are using our services and you want to dabble in SMS, reach out to your CSM. They can help you, play with it to see if it's something that you want to play with.
I'd be really interested in, and again, I don't know if this data's out there. I don't know if someone's done this before, really seeing, okay, we did, SMS was our first point of renewal contact, right? We started that way instead of sending the hard invoices, and what percentage renewed with that versus the traditional, email or mail first and then mop up with email or mop up with text. Because I think that the smaller our members get, I think that the more likely they are to not be in front of a computer, to be out working, to be away from that traditional digital device that could renew outside of an SMS, or a laptop, how much it might take for them to stop what they're doing to go to a laptop to go, or stop what they're doing to pull out a phone to go do it. But, to see if that improved, if that decreased renewals. But yeah, it's interesting to know that prop fuel, we are not prop fuel users, but it has raised my eye. But it is interesting to know that you all offer it, let alone that other people are thinking about it as well.
Yeah, it's a very small, primarily but I can say beyond any doubt, email is still the most effective medium of communication from a scale perspective. I know there's problems with email, but it's still the primary medium of communication. That's a difficult one to argue against. But we saw SMS as kind of an interesting approach, which is why we added that in. And I don't know, like I take this with a grain of salt, but something like maybe 15 to 20% of our clients are using SMS. And I don't think any of them are smashing it with SMS. Like they're all kind of in this growth, trying to figure it out stage. So I'm very curious to see where it goes. I think it's just a long tail. Like I think it's going to be around a long time, but it's just a long tail. And I'm Googling metrics. Jason, I'm going to write your name down. If I find this, I'm going to put, I'll see what I can find around metrics. I know we don't have anything, but I'll see if I can find any reports. And if you find something, put it in the put it in the community.
Will do.
Hey, there is an interesting question in here, Chad. I'm going back a little bit to the credit card stuff. I don't want to get back to this big discussion about credit cards again, but he said, aren't there different rules for security of customers' information being stored, possible hacking, increase insurance costs, so on? Chad, I'll answer from my experience as a vendor, where we also, some of our clients pay with credit card, very, very similar to you guys. Now, it may be different, so I'd like to hear from an association perspective. From our perspective, we don't manage the credit card transaction itself. That's outsourced to another company. So we manage the, how do I put it? And I'm not my partner would be able to describe this in great detail because he wrote the code, but we manage the collection, not even. We manage the process, but the actual collection and transaction happens on somebody else's servers. And they're the ones that are liable and well, I'm sure we're somewhat liable, but they're the ones responsible for the security elements. Dana, I see you nodding your head. Thank you, because I don't know legally. Anyone else have experience with that or knowledge of that can?
My last association did auto renewals, and their renewal rate was great when the card didn't decline or when the expiration was past due. But at the same time, it was mitigating as much risk, not keeping that data in-house. As you're saying, Dave, I will second that. Stay far, far away of data keeping for PCI compliance, et cetera, et cetera.
So we're about more than halfway through this. Process check here. I feel like I'm over moderating. Forgive me if I am. I would really appreciate your feedback afterward. If there's a way I could help moderate this better, maybe shut up, let you guys do more talking. That's one possibility. Feel free to tell me that. If there's a different methodology, if you'd like to go into breakout groups of smaller groups, that's cool too. So any suggestions at this point for the remainder of the hour? It's going all right? All right. I'm going to throw it in the chat too, and you can also send me a direct message if you have something crusty for me to hear. We didn't even go into any of our questions yet. This is great. You guys are sparking most of the conversation. So all of that came, I forgot who even asked it. All that came from one person sharing their question that they came to the table with. Did anybody else have any topics that you want to discuss or questions that'll help you make decisions in your organization around renewals?
We had a couple. I saw Jeremy come up first.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually kind of curious if anyone has made a hard transition from hard copy invoices, mailing them out, to just going strictly just by email. We're kind of at that moment of we're seeing more and more people being willing to just do it to pay online versus through an invoice. We're seeing less and less invoices come by mail, but we're still hesitant to make that jump to just get rid of all the mail versions and just go strictly email. So I'm curious if anyone has made that transition recently and how did it go?
Yeah, we turned ours off about a year ago. We had started putting QR codes on the paper invoices just to see if we had any response to them. What we realized probably later was that the people who liked getting paper invoices were not likely to scan a QR code. They might be this, a certain type of individual who still liked paper. So because we didn't have any response to the scanning, we, felt comfortable turning it off. But then we didn't really have the ability to have any data to show if we had any impact on retention rates. All we have is anecdotally hearing from member services that, a few times a week we'll get, some people calling and say, hey, I never received my paper invoice and I forgot to renew my membership. So fortunately, we get the calls. We don't know how many didn't call to renew. So I think it hasn't overall been that noticeable, but we do still get some calls a year later from people saying, "Hey, I never got my paper invoice." So, but yeah, so we have experienced that already.
Jeremy, what do you do first? Do you mail invoices or do you email invoices first as your first touch?
We actually send out at about the same time. We'll send out paper invoices, and then an email goes out right around the same time. So they should be getting hit with it both about the same time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're doing mail first, it would be an interesting shift to go email first and then see how much you're cutting off that way and then following paper. Or if you're going email first, maybe switch it up for a year and see what the drop off is, and at least have data to speak to the powers that be, board, executives, et cetera, of, hey, we did it this way. This is why we need to do this. B, we switched back the other way. This is why we need to go back. But I think at the end of the day, getting the money in the door is the most important thing. I mean, the amount of phone calls we put in on our side to mop up month, 6 weeks after due date is just, yeah, I wish, I think that's part of my, I'm not going to take too much time, but I think that's my fear and frustration is members ignoring emails, and it takes, walking down the highway with a proverbial 2x4 and saying, hey, you're late. And stopping what they're doing to get them to pay. I don't know what everybody else's experience is, but
I would say it's a generational thing too. We have a lot of older attorneys who they expect it to come in by paper. They give it to their admin and they take care of it. So it's just how they've done it for years and years and years. But we're obviously having newer attorneys coming in who are more willing to go online and pay for it and take care of it that way. So, and we did some experimenting this last due season where we did the QR code on the envelopes, and we actually did see a lot of scans with those. So we definitely know that they were interested in that. It wasn't a huge number though, so it was kind of not like oh yeah, we definitely need to switch over, and but it's safe to do that. And then we also tried a postcard versus a full enveloped invoice to the younger audience, to our younger attorneys. But we didn't see too many use that. And we had this QR code on there to scan. That was the call to action with that. Many didn't jump on that. So we don't know if the postcard just was white noise in the mail. Like they didn't realize it was an important thing versus something that's in an envelope. So we've kind of played around with it, but we're kind of in that okay, when do we make that, call of let's just go strictly all digital and see what happens. But we're just, I think there's hesitancy of how many members we could potentially lose because of that.
So I was going to add in, Jeremy, that we switched over in the middle of COVID, but we also deal with adult daycare. So everybody had to go remote here in California. So they latched on to email passion so that they got things communicated to them. And we did a lot of webinars. So everybody was really engaged. And at that point, we had more people in the organization than would normally be engaged in the association. So we just took advantage of that. I switched over to AMS in the same time period, second year of COVID. And so everything kind of went digital. And it is the same, a lot of an older demographic involved. And so getting them to get on board with that, just kind of that's one silver lining of COVID, if you will, in the particular industry. So, and we do follow up with the paper for those that don't renew via online. And I was also going to add earlier, we have the ability to switch to a full auto renewal, charging them if they want in, but we haven't pulled that option yet. So
one approach that I love that I've seen is asking, so starting digitally, of course, because it's the least expensive and most scalable, asking the question, are you planning to renew? And then what happens is, generally speaking, you have like 3 options. Yep, no, and not sure. or maybe there's not sure. Let's just go with a yes and no for now. So of the people that answer, you're going to get some yeses, and you know to nurture them and get them to actually do it. And then you have the no's, and you can follow up with them with a phone call. So now you know actually who to pick up the phone and call. But then there's a third group of people, which is the people that didn't answer. And after several attempts of these emails, and maybe SMS if you have that approach, after several attempts, that percentage of people that didn't answer goes down and down and down. You might get it down to like 40 or 50% don't answer, which is way less than 100%. And then that's where, now this is just my idea. We haven't gotten this far with people we work with, but like the idea here is let's send them a postcard. Like, wait, hold off. And then let's cut your postcard expenses in half, and let's reach out to the people that are not responding digitally to the postcard. And you guys get special rates for mail, right? Yeah, so postcards are pretty cheap to send out, I think.
But I think I agree with Jeremy. We did the same thing what also Jason described, start with the email first and see what we got, and then kind of cut it down. And the third time we did send the letter, but I think having a letter versus a postcard is more effective because it's that official invoice. So I've seen that being more effective than any other kind of mail. But I would just suggest do it. I think we're so fearful sometimes, and once we do it, I think in the beginning, if you have the resources and have some staff that can follow up, I think that's important, especially in the beginning. But I think you have already done the big steps of doing both emailing and mailing. I think you've already ahead of the curve. So I think just jumping in full force, you'll be fine.
Yeah, Mike says from Travel and Tourism Research says, ask members track preference. Vast majority prefer invoice emailed.
I think we all know our members, right? I mean, it's not like, we don't spend enough time with them on the phone with them, begging them to do anything with us or just engaging with them, period. I think it's a matter of, as again, Mike said, connect with them, ask them, and track, and really, I think Mike hit it nail on the head.
I have a topic that I think would be really interesting, which is dormant member win back, which is kind of a cousin of renewals, right? But before we do that, I'd much prefer if somebody here came with something they wanted to discuss and we haven't touched on it yet. Let's do that. Is there anyone that has something that's come up in this conversation that we haven't talked about? Questions, something you're doing really well that you want to share with the group? All right. Okay. So I would, it always excites me when I see some organizations go back 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes even further, to prospects or people that have let their membership lapse. Usually it's that one. And this one cracks me up. Like, you can go back years and you send people a note saying, hey, do you know your membership lapsed? It's shocking. People that haven't been a member for years, it's shocking to me what percentage of them will say, wait, what? I'm not a member? Yeah, I want to renew. It's years later. So I'm curious, I don't even know how to ask, maybe just show of hands, like how many people here have done that, gone back more than, say, for people that didn't renew this past year, you go back at least a year. I saw Jason raise his hand. Who's done the I'll call it dormant member win back campaign? Not the majority. That's really interesting. Will you
What do you
try?
consider dormant?
Because it's
Sorry?
awesome.
How far back?
As far as you can, man. Like if I've seen
We've gone back 3 years. I wasn't sure if you consider that dormant.
No, yes, I would consider my definition of dormant. This is just me. Like my definition of dormant is anybody that didn't renew this year. But and has gone a year without renewals. That's what I mean by this year. So if they've gone a year where they weren't a member, they're dormant. That's in my book. All the way up to that year, you're still like just out of grace or lapsed. But once you're lapsed for a year, you're dormant in my book. So like I would it, and I've seen people go back 5 years of lapsed members to win them back. If you haven't, man, I strongly recommend giving it a shot. Tanya.
We did. We tried that last year. We had a good couple of hundred people that just lapsed and didn't officially cancel their membership. And so we kind of did the same messaging. We got some, I think we got like maybe a 2% out of the whole entire that actually came back. So that was, I guess, a success because it was a very far reach and we were just like, here you go. So I think we might consider doing that again for this year, just to see.
Hey, Tanya, try that message of did you know? Ask the question, did you know your membership lapsed? Because I think you'll find a shocking number of people want to answer that and they're going to say no. Of course, you got to make it easy for them to answer the question. All right. We've got just 6 minutes left. I want to give you a little breathing room before we wrap. I would be really interested to hear, and if you just want to put it into the chat, that works too. My thought is to do these on a monthly basis. Does that seem like a pretty good frequency? I mean, this was awesome. I enjoyed this. I think to come up with a topic each month, like student engagement or event promotion or whatever. Okay, monthly sounds good. Jeremy, good. We'll do it. Yes, topics. Thank you, Brittany. Can you put your topics in the chat, topics that you think would be of value? And then I have an ask. Here's my ask for you. I want to see if we can get the LinkedIn part rolling. And so what I'd like you all to do, if you have a second, just take a minute and put in like some takeaway, something you got out of this. Put this into the membership masterminds community in LinkedIn. I just put the link to the community. Plug it in. Let's see if we can get like if LinkedIn sees this activity, like a lot of social media, they'll bump it up to the top of people's inboxes. So I don't know how it works, but let's give it a shot and see if we can get more activity. Also invite your friends, get them in here.
And I just made a comment too, but if you guys have a question that we didn't get to, like Anna, I think you had your hand raised at some point. Go ahead and post that in the community too, so we can get back to that and still make sure that we're addressing some of the challenges that people are seeing, the questions you have. That's what this space is for.
I do have one more question, like around the logistics here. Do you guys like just kind of jumping into this and having us talk? Yes, I'm seeing a couple heads nod, because the alternative, and I saw one reaching different age groups, we could bring like some pro in, or maybe an association professional too that has some expertise, and have them do like a 10-minute talk on something to lead into the conversation. Which do you like better? Just coming in kind of talking ourselves, or bringing an expert in for a 10-minute intro to the topic? Just jump in. Tell me your thoughts.
I think we would all like to avoid a sales pitch. At least I know I would.
No, that's not my intent. Yeah. No, my intent was around like literally an expert. Like I'm thinking about a demographics expert talking about different age groups or something.
Yeah, subject matter expertise, I think, would be good. A guided discussion would be great. But I do think you also need to accommodate or allow for open discussion. So perhaps maybe if you are doing this monthly, then we only have a guided discussion or subject matter expertise once every 3 months or something like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it every single time.
I love that. Okay, so let's do this a couple more times. That's great feedback, Carrie. So let's do this a couple more times, and then maybe October, November, we'll bring in an expert for 10, 15 minutes. And then we can make a decision after that if we like that, or if we just want to have the discussion part. All right, this is great. Hey, Brittany, do we have a way to keep track of this chat so we can go through these topics?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all. I hope to see you in the next one. We'll announce a date for the next one in about a month or so. All right. Hope to see many of you at ASA Annual in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye,
Thanks for
guys.
joining.
I'd love your feedback. Send me a note if there's something we can do better. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks, Jeremy.